Welcome to SensifyCare podcast and video series that helps you to understand your lab tests and your health better. Today, we're doing a really focused deep dive. It's all about young adults, those of you basically conquering the world between 20 and 40. Our mission, to nail down the absolute essential pathology lab tests you should be thinking about right now. This isn't about finding problems. It's about building a solid baseline for your health. Being truly preventative.
Exactly. And just before we jump into the details and the science, please remember this information is really for guidance. It's definitely not a replacement for proper medical advice. For any specific health concerns, you should always consult with a healthcare professional. That's always the best approach.
Okay, great. So let's start with what we're calling the lifestyle check. This is the question I hear all the time. Maybe you do too. Look, I feel pretty good. I feel great even. Why should I bother getting needles stuck in me? Like, what are the actual hidden risks from, my daily grind, maybe too much takeout, that a blood test can actually flag up early?
That's the perfect place to start, because the biggest threats at this age, they're often silent, and they tend to be metabolic. So when we talk prevention in your 20s and 30s, we're immediately looking at the metabolic health panel.
Okay, metabolic health. What's in that?
Well, the first key part is the lipid profile. This checks your cholesterol, the HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. And what's really key here is you're not checking for an imminent heart attack. You're looking for underlying genetic tendencies or maybe chronic inflammation. Catching these early gives you potentially a decade's head start to make changes. These numbers, they don't shout, they whisper risk factors.
Okay, so let's say I'm 25, I get it done, and everything looks perfect. Do I really need this every single year?
Good question. If your first results are normal and you don't have major risk factors like obesity, high blood pressure, or a strong family history of heart disease, then checking every 4 to 6 years is generally considered reasonable. But, and this is important, if you do have those risk factors, then yes, you need to be testing much more often. It's about managing those risks early on.
Right, makes sense. Okay, moving from fats, so let's talk sugar. The other big metabolic issue is diabetes screening. What are the essential pathology tests there, especially since we're seeing it appear earlier in people?
Yeah, absolutely. Here we rely on blood glucose tests. Primarily, that's the fasting plasma glucose, or FPG, and order the HbA1c test, often just called A1c. Think of the A1c like an average score for your blood sugar over time. It's not just about what you ate yesterday morning. It gives a picture of your average glucose levels over the last, say, 2 to 3 months. Really useful.
Ah, okay. So the A1c is kind of the longer-term view. That sounds incredibly helpful, actually. So if I'm generally healthy, when should I start thinking about getting that checked?
So for people without symptoms or known risk factors, screening often starts around age 35. But because we are seeing lifestyles contributing to earlier onset, if you are overweight or obese or you have that family history, you should definitely start earlier, maybe around age 25 or 30. And if it's normal, repeat it at least every 3 years, minimum.
Got it. Fats, sugars. What about the liver? Are liver function tests or LFTs something young adults need if they're not happy drinkers?
Yes, absolutely essential to consider. LFTs are really crucial for detecting something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD. And yeah, despite the name, it's often not directly tied to alcohol. It's strongly linked to insulin resistance, maybe those high sugar diets, the same metabolic issues we've been discussing. So if you have metabolic risk factors, checking your LFTs is part of monitoring for potential hidden stress on this vital organ.
Okay, wow. So that metabolic panel covers some big silent risks. Now, what about just keeping the engine running smoothly day to day, our sort of essential maintenance? What basic blood tests should I maybe consider yearly just for general well-being, maybe energy levels?
Right. This is where we look at tests that impact your daily energy and function. The first definite must-have here is the complete blood count, or CBC.
CBC.
Yeah.
That sounds basic, but what does it actually tell someone like me, a busy professional maybe just feeling a bit burnt out?
Well, it monitors your overall health, but it's the main screening tool for anemia, and this is where it gets really relevant. Anemia is incredibly common, especially in young women due to menstrual cycles, maybe dietary factors too. It's a major cause of that persistent fatigue and weakness. So if you're constantly tired, before blaming just stress, a CBC checks if your body even has enough oxygen carriers circulating. It's fundamental.
Okay. That's a really good point. What else for maintenance?
The second big one for this category is the thyroid-stimulating hormone test, the TSH.
TSH, really? I always thought thyroid issues were something that happened much later in life. Why should a 22-year-old worry about that?
That's a common thought, but hypothyroidism, an underactive thyroid, is actually quite prevalent in this age group too. Symptoms like unexplained weight gain, maybe noticeable hair loss, mood changes, they're common, and they often get brushed off as just stress or diet. But the thyroid, it's a huge regulator of your body's energy. So we often suggest considering a baseline TSH test in your early 20s, then maybe repeat it every 3 to 5 years, or definitely sooner if those kinds of unexplained symptoms pop up.
Interesting. Okay, thyroid noted. We talked liver earlier. What about the other big filter, the kidneys? Do we need to check those early too?
Yes, including kidney function tests is wise. As we move into our 30s, various lifestyle factors, maybe high protein diets, chronic stress, even some long-term medications can start to put a strain on the kidneys. Including this in your panel helps catch any subtle signs of change early, ideally before any real impact happens.
Right, catching things early seems to be the theme here.
Mhm.
Okay, that brings us to our third area, modern deficiencies and acute risk markers. Let's talk deficiencies. Seriously, why is everyone suddenly talking about vitamin D and B12 too? I feel like I know people who are mainlining coffee when what they really needed was a B12 shot.
Yes. You've definitely hit on what some experts are calling the Indian deficiency duo, though it's becoming common globally. Our modern lifestyles, often indoors, in offices, mean much less sun exposure. That directly impacts vitamin D production. And at the same time, certain dietary patterns, especially vegetarian or vegan diets, if not carefully planned, can contribute to B12 deficiency.
So what's the actual impact? Is it just feeling a bit tired, or is it more than that? Like, does it affect performance?
Oh, absolutely. It's often more than just sluggishness. Deficiencies in either D or B12 can cause quite severe fatigue, muscle weakness, and crucially for this age group, noticeable brain fog, difficulty concentrating. Because these symptoms are so general, people blame stress or burnout. They might struggle unnecessarily at work or studies. Getting a one-time screen is really highly recommended just to see where you stand initially. Follow-ups then depend on your levels and if you need supplements.
Got it. Check the D and B12. Okay, now shifting slightly to acute risk markers, what about essential infectious disease tests, the ones done via pathology labs? Should all young adults get certain screenings?
Yes, there are a few key baseline screenings that guidelines strongly recommend. First, an HIV test. It's recommended at least once as a baseline for everyone aged 15 to 65. Second, a one-time test for hepatitis C virus, or HCV. That's recommended for all adults aged 18 to 79. And just to add, for pregnant women, HCV screening is actually recommended with each pregnancy.
Okay, HIV and Hep C baseline checks. What about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, that often don't show symptoms right away?
Good point. Routine screening for infections like chlamydia and gonorrhea is highly recommended for sexually active women up until age 25. For women 25 and older, screening is generally based on individual risk factors. These are important pathology tests because, as you said, they can be silent but potentially cause serious long-term issues like fertility problems if they aren't treated.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground. So let's pull it all together and think about the long game. If I follow this advice, get this comprehensive panel done, the metabolic stuff, the maintenance checks, the deficiency screening, how often do I actually need to repeat the whole thing? And how does just tracking these numbers actually help me stay healthy long term?
Right, the frequency question. So if you're a healthy adult, no major current issues, repeating the full panel roughly every 12 months. So an annual checkup is a good general guideline. However, and this is key, we need to emphasize increased frequency, maybe every 3 to 6 months if you do have chronic conditions, things like prediabetes, high cholesterol, or if you're actively taking supplements or medications that require monitoring, or simply if you're experiencing persistent unexplained symptoms like fatigue or weight changes.
But the real power isn't just knowing the number on one specific day, is it? It's about seeing the pattern, the trend over time. That feels like the core of real preventative health.
Precisely, you've nailed it. The true value of regular testing is establishing your personal health baseline while you're young and relatively healthy in your 20s and 30s. The real aha moments, the insights, come from spotting those early, maybe subtle shifts against your own trend. For example, noticing your A1C or maybe your LDL cholesterol creeping up slowly year after year, even if it's still technically in the normal range. That allows you to step in with lifestyle adjustments before it hits a critical level.
Yeah, that's the shift from just reacting when something's broken to actually proactively managing your health trajectory.
Exactly right. And that proactive, trend-based approach is really what platforms like SensifyCare focus on. By tracking these specific test results over time, we can help you spot those emerging trends much earlier, provide guidance on follow-up timing, and really empower you to manage your health proactively. The data tells a story, your story, over time.
That focus on trend analysis really does change the game, doesn't it? It moves us from just worrying about sickness to actively building a stronger foundation for the future.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through these essential lab tests. It really underscores how being proactive in your 20s and 30s is probably one of the best investments you can make in your long-term health and, frankly, your performance.
My pleasure. And just one final reminder. The information shared today is for guidance purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice. For any specific health issues or concerns, consulting with a qualified healthcare professional is always the recommended course of action.